Welcome back to another episode of the Done Deal Show in the build-up to the closing of the Summer 22 transfer window. Dean Jones joins me today. Lots to talk about. Aubameyang crunch talks to try and get the deal done today are happening. We're going to be looking at Pedro Neto, Tielemans to Arsenal. We will be touching on Zaha and Antony. Where will Anthony Gordon? Where will they end up this window? Plus much, much more. Morning, Dean. How are you, my friend? Nice bank holiday weekend?
And by Monday, even though it was a bank holiday day, you're back into the reality that the transfer window is still open. And there's a lot to be discussed still before it slams shut on Thursday. So, yeah, nice little break-ish. Still obviously watching loads of football. But, yeah, it's crunch time now. You know, there's some big dilemmas that teams face. Some players, too, with some decisions to make. And I think it's important that, like, just heading into this chat as well as into the final few days of the transfer window, that we remember how twists and turns can happen at this stage. Like, agents have got players that they've not been able to move to their preferred destinations yet. So they're now touting them around to new clubs. There's clubs themselves who have players on the fringes, and they've got to take some decisions on, do they reduce a player's value and get rid of them? Do they weigh up a loan option? Do they cut them from the wage bill and like offload half their wages? The players themselves are going to start pushing for transfers too. Either they're not in the team or they know there's a club out there that wants them and they want that move. So like, there's so many different ways that moves come out of nowhere in the next 2 days. Things are going to move fast. I hope there are a few surprises along the way, because like, even as a journalist and like you're supposed to know everything that's going on. It's not fun if nothing catches you by surprise. Like you want there to be some action. 5 years ago, you were caught by surprise far more often than you are these days. So a couple of surprises are still definitely welcome.
Absolutely, and I'm the same as you. I'm kind of in that space where I said maybe about a month ago that there'll be a deal that happens that no one expects, and maybe that was Casemiro to Man United. I mean, if you'd have come on, you would have probably been called out. Like if 6 weeks ago you'd have said, I think United could sign someone like Casemiro, you'd have been somebody would have tried to put you in a straitjacket,
yeah,
in a padded room, and said you're chatting nonsense. So definitely been some shocks, and there could be more. And we're going to be looking at Chelsea on the show today. Everybody, we're looking at Arsenal. We'll touch on Liverpool. They're now looking at a midfield player, and it's kind of funny how I'm loving watching Liverpool fans at the moment, because all summer it's been, no, Klopp don't want one, we don't want one. Our journalists know what's going on. Now I'm seeing like James Pearce and Paul Joyce getting abuse, because it's like, why are you guys on the beach? Why are we getting news? What's going on at Liverpool? It's funny. Like, it takes one comment from Klopp saying, actually, I think I need a midfielder, and Liverpool fans are like, what's going on? It's crazy. But lots to speak about today on the show. So stay with us, depending on what club updates you're looking for. But of course, Man United completed a £84 million, €100, 7.8 billion rupee deal for Antony. For Antony, not Anthony Gordon, for Antony. Over the course of the weekend. Any more business going to happen at Man United? Ronaldo, Osimhen swap deal we're kind of hearing about. Maybe just Ronaldo leaving. But there is talk of a right back and a goalkeeper, maybe another attacker. What's happening with Man United? Could the fans expect any more business, Dean?
I mean, Ronaldo is the biggest story that could unfold between now and 11 o'clock on Thursday. I mean, I don't even think this is getting the attention it should probably be getting. Like, Cristiano Ronaldo is basically available for transfer with 2 days left of a transfer window. Never thought we would be in this moment where Ronaldo's basically on the market. Yes, United's stance is he's not for sale, but their unofficial stance is that, like, if a reasonable offer comes along, we'll listen to it. So let's see what actually happens here, because at the moment, Cristiano Ronaldo is probably sixth choice in Man United's attacking line. Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial, Jadon Sancho, Antony, and I would even argue Elanga are more important to Ten Hag and the way that he's building this team than Cristiano Ronaldo is. And they all suit the style of play that United are building towards. So, yeah, look, there are options now being looked at. And I think for George Mendes, massive job on his hands here. He needs to find a club that is acceptable to Cristiano Ronaldo. And Ronaldo obviously still considers that he's capable of playing for pretty much any side in the world, and he wants Champions League football. So you look at the clubs he's been linked with in the last week. I mean, there was, I think someone linked him with Ajax. I don't see that one happening. But then there's Napoli, Marseille have been linked, and obviously Sporting are always linked to Cristiano Ronaldo. And Look, Marseille, I don't see that one coming through. Marseille themselves playing it down. But also, I mean, this is a club that's already got Dimitri Payet and Alexis Sanchez in the ranks. Don't see Cristiano Ronaldo being added into that mix, and don't see a positive ending if he was. So I'm not expecting him to land at Marseille. I think Napoli and Sporting look reasonably viable options. Atletico Madrid is an outside shout too in this moment. Napoli definitely open to looking at a way to get that deal done. I'm told that there are some reservations from Cristiano's end, mainly in terms of his family situation. Obviously, he's got a young family, and moving to Naples doesn't really suit his personal situation, as well as some other situations that could arise for him.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to Madrid, whether that is, I guess, staying in England and moving to Chelsea, or obviously going back to Lisbon. And Sporting, we know of the personal connection there. He's got an amazing property that he owns in Lisbon, so he's got somewhere to fit in. His family obviously are going to end up living there. He's building a super home that's like absolutely ridiculous currently, which is about half hour away from Lisbon. Like, this house is absolutely unreal. Have you seen it?
I've seen the pictures and I read this story and someone told me it's true. This is how much money the guy's got. I'd love to be this rich. He's building this house, but he doesn't like the fact there's a golf course. So he's buying a 5-star luxury golf course and hotel and just gonna knock the fucking thing down. I was like, that is flexing. Like, that is flexing. Like, I'm gonna buy it, just knock it down. Like, it's funny, really, because I always said if I ever win the Euro Millions, I'm going to buy my rivals' YouTube channels and then just delete them. I'm going to shut that hotel down. Yeah, it's crazy. So it does feel like I hear where you're coming from. Sorry, continue, mate. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, like, the final pieces on where he decides to go. I mean, I think he's obviously weighing up his legacy here, right? And with Napoli, I mean, one reason you could say he's being enticed there is on the back of the Champions League draw. Now, if he was to join Napoli, his debut would probably be against Liverpool in the Champions League. Other opponents in that group, Rangers and Ajax, like, they're big matches for someone like Cristiano Ronaldo to be involved in, and he's not going to ignore that. It fits his vision of being involved in the Champions League, obviously. And for Napoli, considering his Champions League experience, is something worth considering if they can find a deal. Now, Sporting, we know he's always kind of shut this door. I think it's because he considers the Portuguese league to be below him. But the Champions League draw is really interesting and might just change how he views that, because they're in a group with Spurs, Marseille and Frankfurt. There are goals there to be had for Cristiano Ronaldo. And listen, Sporting have had a bad start to the season. They've lost key players over the summer. They're not playing anything like as well as they have been capable of in recent seasons. They're having to rebuild quite quickly. There's the other issue too of, like, how do they satisfy Ronaldo financially? I mean, there's talk at the moment of, could they give him part ownership in the club, like, instead of a certain amount of money? Could they try? Are there other assets around them that they could offer Ronaldo to become enticed by the idea of returning to Portugal? So there are really intriguing options. I say the other one, as a bit of an outsider now, is Atletico Madrid, but they certainly have been touted, and George Mendes is still working on finding him a home. He's been fine around training, and, like, I checked with Man United whether, like, there's been any fuss, any, like, commotion. Doesn't sound like there has been. It sounds like Ronaldo has been very professional throughout this, like, in terms of training and around the rest of the players. But in terms of the hierarchy and Ronaldo's representatives speaking to the club, it's still clear he wants to leave. Look, the left field option, I guess, is Chelsea. Like, that is possibly there. It's possibly there. It's the best club, the best team he could potentially end up at this moment. They don't have a centre forward. They need one. He's not the top choice, but you never know. If they get desperate, you never know. Look, Ronaldo's vision is that he's turning 38 in February, right? It's old. For a footballer, that is old. And, like, no matter how well you've looked after yourself, it's impossible that your levels aren't dropping off by this point and you're having to consider what comes next. He's going to move into MLS, whether that's as a player or an owner or a bit of both. We're not entirely sure yet. Like, I'm not sure his desire is completely there to even play in MLS at this stage. He wants to be involved. Will he just buy a club? Will he help run a club? Not sure, but retirement is obviously something he's having to think about in the next couple of years. This is a really key stage. Don't forget too that United are very willing to. They put the idea to George Mendes of loaning him out for this year, and having him back. If United are back in the Champions League the year after, triggering the extension so they have Ronaldo back in the Champions League when he was 38, turning 39. So there's a lot here to be discussed, but literally we've got 48 hours to sort it out.
Yeah, it's intriguing, and obviously the reports from Italy have suggested that there's this Osimhen and swap deal that could happen, and it's one of those ones where you think swap deals are very rare. Often when they're called swap deals, in reality they're two separate deals, but they're just kind of worked alongside each other. It's interesting that the outlet that's pushing that is the same outlet that last summer first said that Ronaldo would leave Juve, and Ronaldo's team shut it down, said they're absolutely lying, and then he ends up holding a Man United shirt. So it's one of those ones where I feel like anything is possible right now. This is about I feel like no one's made a concrete offer for Ronaldo. That's why he's still at Man United. But it's almost you're getting to that point now where it's do or die for people. And I know we're going to speak about Chelsea later, but if they end up not doing a deal for Aubameyang and they still need a goal, maybe they get Anthony Gordon, but Anthony Gordon isn't going to score them the goals year one, or maybe even year two that they need. I still think you're right. I think Chelsea is still on. It's very faint right now, but it's one of those in the next, if tomorrow morning you wake up and Aubameyang to Chelsea is dead and finished, you know that Ronaldo news is going to go whoop. And Jorge Mendes is going to be like 5 a.m, knocking on Todd B's office door. Listen, let's chat. Let's sit down there and talk. You know, you might even find Ronaldo could become desperate and pull off a little bit of an odd and wingy, and just turn up at the Chelsea training ground, waiting for the deal to happen. That'd be hilarious, wouldn't it? Imagine a player like Ronaldo doing that. Who knows? It's going to go down to the wire. In terms of speaking to people, are Man United likely to sign anybody else? I know that there's talk of right backs. We know Dubravka's probably going to happen, but I don't really count backup goalies as signings, really. I know it sounds harsh, but I don't.
Yeah.
Is there likely to be any more sort of first team outfield players that the club are looking at between now and the end?
I do think that Dest is still one that should be a storyline, and probably will be a storyline if they can make it happen. Dest is in a really sticky situation here because he's got his international career to think about coming up, and he's also not in that Barcelona team. Doesn't seem to be close to that Barcelona team or in the plans at the moment. Not an ideal place for him to be this year of all years. Look, if United can get him on a free or on a loan, then they'll do it, I think. I don't see why they wouldn't. And Ten Hag, as a kind of mentor to Dest, ideal to kind of get him back in his grasp and help him. I think Dest is a good fit as a footballer too for where Man United are heading. Look, I don't think Dest is the finished article at all, but I like his style of play. I think it's far more fitting to United than anything Wan-Bissaka can offer at the moment. So I think Sergiño Dest is still one to look out for, even though we've gone through the whole summer saying this and nothing has been put on the table for him, which is slightly strange. But maybe that's because they want to swoop at a time when Barcelona have just got to get rid. And they're like, okay, just take him. So I'd say that is one to look out for. And obviously, if that happens, Wan-Bissaka's got to go.
Big question is, did Dest fly to London with Jong yesterday? That's what we want to know. Has he turned up? Memphis is supposedly with him as well. And that is one of the questions from KJ, actually. Memphis Depay to Man United. There was talk of Gakpo and Antony. Now there's talk of Antony and Memphis at a cut price fee. Is that still a deal that United could explore between now and the end of the window? Or is that, do you think that's connected to Ronaldo leaving, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I was saying there about Ronaldo. United have got 5 forwards and Ronaldo at the moment. So that's 6. So even if Ronaldo leaves, they're still going to have 5 forwards. I guess your argument would be there that they don't really have a centre forward in the essential, the way you would view one. So like Rashford and Martial could take it in turns to play there, but neither's like a proper number 9. But Memphis isn't a proper 9 either, even though he has played there, obviously. Now Memphis is being touted around. There's no doubt about it. Looked like he was going to be joining Juventus. Barcelona were letting him go for pretty much nothing. And then I'm told basically Barca got a little bit spooked because there was a theory that actually Memphis, I can't guarantee exactly how close this got, but that they got wind that he might be going to Real Madrid as backup for Benzema. Now, if that was going to happen, then they were like, no, absolutely not. Like, if you can show us that you're not joining them, then that's fine. But there's no way that Barcelona were going to let Memphis leave and end up at Barcelona.
And once you're a free agent, you're a free agent. They can't stop you. Do you know what I mean?
So that was so I think that tripped up discussions a little while back. But anyway, yeah, Memphis has been offered to Man United. He's not the ideal solution, not going to lie. Like, that's not exactly what United would want, but they're having to be open-minded about how they view these last days of the window.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Man United, and look, I don't necessarily want to see Memphis back. I almost feel like an X is an X for a reason. Just a general rule I have in life. Not everyone agrees. Darren Goff definitely doesn't. He remarried his ex-wife. Like, these things happen, but generally, big up Darren Goff. Not that you're watching, but there we go. I used to love listening to Darren Goff on Drive Time with Adrian.
He was quite good, wasn't he? Yeah.
That was when TalkSport for me was elite. It's now just
very much different.
Yeah, I keep calling them out. I'm probably angling for a job. No, I keep calling them out in the sense of they keep talking big Man United subjects, and they never have anyone sitting in their room who's like defending Man United stance, and it just annoys me. It's like, ironically, you'd actually make your shows better if you had Trevor Sinclair slagging them off with someone actually logically backing them. It would make like the ebb and the flow. It's just like
you need that conversation.
It's like three people in a room just shitting on them, and I'm like, come on, man. Like, they have like Goldbridge that does one show a week. He does a good job. Flex is on there every now and then, but they need like that. For me, they just need that. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Memphis coming back would be an interesting one. I wouldn't mind it, but I'd rather us go for a Gakpo. In fairness, listen, I don't know how much more money we've got to spend. We've spent nearly 200 million, which is still 50, 60, 70 million more than we were touted to spend. I'd love us. Listen, I'd like an even Tony at this point because I really rate him. Gakpo would be a good option as an example. There are players out that I would personally like to see, but I do think we need a bit more, like one or two extra players, and this Man United squad could really start to take shape. We've been much better in the last few games, and if Casemiro and Antony have the same impact that little Malacia and even smaller Lisandro Martinez are having, like, I'm not saying United are going to make top four. I'm not saying we're going to win the league, of course. But the last two games have been night and day to the opening two with the old guard playing. So I think Man United fans just want to see an extra player or two that Ten Hag wants, because we've seen the impact that his players have had so early. So look, if it is Memphis, then I'm sure the manager's 100% behind the deal, and in the short term, it could work for us. So we will see. Viewers, do us a big favor and smash the like and share button. Arsenal subjects coming up next. After that, we're talking Chelsea, then a bit of Liverpool before the end. So make sure you stay with us, smash the like and the share button. A quick question first, though. Morning, Dean and Terry. Do you think that it was wrong to sack Scott Parker?
Wow, I mean, that's a way. That must be so annoying as a manager. You use 9-0 and then have no time to rectify it. Look, Scott Parker made a big decision when he decided to leave Fulham for Bournemouth. The reasons he left Fulham was basically that he was very frustrated by the lack of control he had over transfers, the style of ownership that Fulham had, the way that they went about using data to sign players. He just felt he was restricted, and Bournemouth came in and he felt he had a bit more freedom there and that he could guide them up. Look, he managed to get them up. Fulham moved on, got Marco Silva, play a completely different brand of football and are absolutely thriving now. Scott Parker just is so negative in his mindset. I really like him as a bloke. Like, I've got to know him a bit, and I really like him. He's a really decent bloke, and absolutely full of confidence in the way that he views football. But it's almost to his detriment, because it limits the way that he plays football, and he struggles to understand other people's philosophy because he's so sure of his own way of playing. Now, ultimately, Bournemouth do play quite negative football. They've just been battered by Liverpool 9-0 at a time when Liverpool were at their lowest ebb for some time. So you can't really argue with Bournemouth's decision here. Who they replace him with is ultimately going to be interesting. Sean Dyche, I see, touted straight away for that job. We'll have to wait and see how that moves forward. But I have to say, as much as I like Scott Parker, I don't think that's the wrong decision, because Bournemouth were heading one way, and they probably are, and that's the Championship.
Yeah, my view has nothing to do with any of that. I'm still angry that he was picked consistently for England over Michael Carrick, so fuck him. It still bothers me that my country did that. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, no, it's not the wrong decision. I think he's For me, he's a championship manager. He is a championship level manager. I don't think he cuts it in the Prem.
He's a really good coach. He's a really
Yeah.
good coach, and people that have coached coached with him say like this. He could genuinely coach at a very high level, possibly even with like England players, and like in the setups, whether it's one of the unders teams or at youth level, getting involved in that. And with the FA, like I wouldn't rule out him going down that path, to be honest, because like he's been around football his entire life. Like he was one of the first child prodigies that we knew of. Do you remember he was in that advert as a kid when he was at Cheltenham?
Yeah, doing the kick-ups and that was massive. Yeah, no, he certainly was, mate. And listen, he was a good footballer. I'm only being flippant over that. But, there's a difference. Like, Steve McLaren is considered in football as a world-class coach.
Yeah.
He's not a top-class manager. Coaching and managing are two different things. And maybe that's where Scott Parker sits. But viewers, What do you think? Parker sacked? Leave us your comments below. Now, moving on to Arsenal. So there is some breaking news in relation to Arsenal today and their midfield pursuit, which we were going to start on. It's been confirmed by David Ornstein that Mohamed Elneny has suffered a significant injury versus Fulham. Partey also nursing a minor injury. So Arsenal are looking to go into the market and buy a midfielder. Leicester are still asking for 35 to 40 million for Youri Tielemans. With those two injuries, maybe it's already highlighted to Arsenal. God, if we get a couple of players injured, the midfield is we're down to Panino or whatever his name is, Patio in the middle. Like Arsenal Arsenal started brilliantly, 4 wins from 4, first time since the invincible season. But they certainly need to go out and buy some. They need another player at least, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken here for the last probably 2 shows about the fact that Arsenal were kind of exploring like that depth issue in midfield and how likely it was that they were going to need to press the button and go for that extra midfielder. And I think Partey's problem at the weekend kind of gave them the first inclination that they will, because they don't quite have that depth. And now they've got another problem in that area. It's almost certain that they will. Now, Tielemans, I believe that you could probably get for 25 million from what I hear. So that's still on the table and obviously one they've been looking at. Now, the thing that I've heard today is that Artur's agents have been touting him around the Premier League again. Everton have been strongly linked in the last couple of days. That'll be part of this. He will have been offered to them. But there are other clubs too that Artur is being offered to from Juve. And it won't surprise me at all if one of those is Arsenal. Arsenal have been considering Artur for a while. He's, in terms of finances, it's much easier to do than Tielemans. It's basically nothing. And that's one that we should probably keep in mind as an option for Arsenal as we head into these last couple of days. So, yeah, interesting one. It's definitely something to think about, and it's been a niggling concern for them as we've gone into this season. 4 out of 4, absolutely perfect. Season couldn't have started better, but it's been with the same 13, 14 players, and that's fine. That's obviously great. You're the best team in the league at the moment with those players, but that's not going to serve you throughout the season. How much further can you push on? Look, the start that Arteta's had, any time that Arsenal have started the season with 4 wins out of 4, they've finished first or second in the league. Like, that's how significant a start this is. Happened twice. Last 2 times was under Wenger. I think it's in 2004 and 2005. They finished top and they finished second in those 2 seasons. The other 2 times were much further back. But ultimately, yeah, that's the kind of start that they've had. Now, they want to get into that conversation, obviously. Is it realistic? Probably not, given the competition in the league at the moment. But if they are going to compete, even to break the top 4, get into the top 3, they've got to have that depth, because you can't survive on 13, 14 players anymore.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about it. I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, and it's kind of, we know what fan bases move like online. They move in packs, really. There's safety in numbers. I think they've been brilliant. Their start is there. The improvement is clear to see, but they need another player or two. And I saw a quote today from Fabrizio that was basically, Arsenal have no intention to pay 35 to 40 million because he's free next year.
Yeah.
The problem is with that logic. And again, I understand the logic. It is a logical thought process. However, fans have got to stop buying into this nonsense at times. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say you want to pay 25 million, but Leicester, because I think you're now desperate, go 30, 35. That 10 million you choose not to spend could be the difference between making it into the Champions League and not. And then it's worth the investment. Do you get where I'm coming from? And I think that how would Arsenal fans feel if you got to the end of this season and you were 2 points away from making it into the Champions League? Pedro Neto and Youri Tielemans right now might cost you £70 million, but that could get you into the Champions League, which is worth £50 to £60 million. You then, like, if you want to play accountants, you then offset that to what they would cost you buying them a year later when you were quote unquote less desperate. You're better off financially. Now, it is a gamble because you might bring them in and still not make it. But surely as fans, you'd rather spend the money, take the gamble and miss out rather than say, what if? What if we had have done that? What if we would have made that investment? So I think Arsenal fans need to be really, they've got to push hard here. But listen, you've started brilliantly. We can see the vision. So many Arteta outers and now Arteta inners. So many people are seeing the wood for the trees, as it were, in terms of the direction that Arsenal have gone in. But now is the time to not be, in my opinion, now is the time to not be cheap. You're not talking about Neto and Youri Tielemans being bottom of the barrel, unwanted targets, kind of like a Rabia or an Arnautovic, like a makeshift. These are players top of the priority. The reason they're not bidding, through what we're reading, is the players are deemed too expensive. Too much money that they want for Neto, too much money that they want for Youri Tielemans. But I kind of feel like if you don't do it, I feel like Arsenal will regret it in the long term. And the fact they've got the money, like they've got the money to spend, and they've offloaded players as well now. They said, and this is where I think Arsenal fans are being dragged along by their club a little bit. They were told, once they get rid of a few players, then they'll bring some in. Well, Pepe's gone now. Why is no one coming in? Like, they've got rid of people on loan. Someone's saying that Patino's actually gone out on loan. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I just look at Arsenal and think, you look so good. Don't allow your football club to, like, tighten the purse strings now. Like, right now is the wrong time to do it, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take it with a pinch of salt, to be honest, that they won't spend at the moment. They will spend for the right player at the moment, and they just need assurances that it's the right deal to do. Arsenal will change their strategy, and they've been burned in the past by mistakes that they've made in the 2 or 3 years before Arteta's vision came into place. And might be right. Ruben Neves, for me, I don't understand why he's still at Wolves. I don't really get that, to be honest with you. Like, he's unbelievable. And this isn't disrespectful to Wolves. It's just that, like, he is too good to be there. He should be playing in at least the Europa League, probably the Champions League. And Arsenal, for me, should be knocking on that door right now and look at if they could get that done. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what Arsenal fans make of that. Like, would you rather have Tielemans? Would you rather have Neves? Or would you rather take Artur just because he's cheaper? But I think Ruben Neves is the player that Arsenal should go for. They've obviously sniffed around it before and not gone there. But they are at the moment in talks, or at least looking to have talks with Wolves over Pedro Neto. I mean, are Wolves going to be open to losing both those players? Of course they're not. But ultimately, if you end up getting one of those, like, at least you've given it a crack. Like, they are, you could argue they're the 2 best players. So why not try it? I mean, Pedro Neto is a really interesting one. He's going to cost you around £60 million at this point. If you'd have got him for him earlier in the window, you'd have got him at about £50 million. What's interesting here around George Mendes and Pedro Neto is that clubs that are interested here, and he has been touted around a little bit, are being told, look, basically, are you sure you want to risk missing out on Neto? Like, this is one of the best players available in his position right now. And actually the comparison's been made to me to Diogo Jota, because Diogo Jota was offered to quite a few clubs were considering that before Liverpool went and done it. Yeah. And Jota's obviously properly taken off at Liverpool and probably hit levels quicker than people realised he would. And the agents are saying, look, you thought Jota was going to be good, and he is. This guy will be better. This guy will be an upgrade on what he is capable of. Do you want to miss out on that? So that's the other things to consider here. Like, this is being pushed a lot, and it's a tough one for Wolves. Look, we're into the last days of a window, and they're dealing with Neto and Neves and Adama Traore and Hwang, and they've got 4 or 5 players that are being touted with moves, and it's not ideal at all. But ultimately, this is what happens when you're a team of their level that's had quite a lot of reasonable relative success. You've got to take the rough with the smooth, and this is the price of success, I guess, with these players. You manage to get them as a result of your connections, but the problem is those connections are at some point going to look to get their clients up to that next level.
Yeah, listen, I totally agree. I think the Pedro Neto one is another example. I've seen people saying in the comments about Ruben Neves. Firstly, though, they're saying, you know, he's only got 2 years left on his deal. Don't want to overpay. It's not about overpaying. You don't know. No one knows in 2 years or even next summer. You don't know where you're going to be and what your rivals want. Rodri might decide, I want to go back to Spain. Barcelona want him or Real Madrid want him. I'm not saying they will. I'm just making this up. Yeah. And you know what City are like? City are one of those clubs where they go, we don't want to lose people. If they don't want to, City are like, if you don't want to be here, we let you go.
Yeah.
City might go, we want Ruben Neves. And no disrespect, if Ruben Neves is offered a first team berth at City, he picks them over anyone in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So I feel like when people like, this is what I mean by playing accountant. I get overspending on substandard players, Williams, right? I get it. But right now, it might cost you 50 million for Ruben Neves, but you're not just buying the talent, you're stopping anybody else from getting him. And I just feel like, and it isn't just Arsenal. I look at Man United in that space. I know we don't want to spend any more, but it's like, listen, I still, you suddenly have a midfield that's got, you know, maybe we do a 3-man midfield with Fred, Neves, and Casemiro. That's suddenly a really good midfield. And there's money to be made there. On Pedro Neto, I'm hearing that Arsenal, again, same hearing, I'm reading that Arsenal might push to advance this in the last few days of the window. But I think, again, they could miss out on such a talented player if they don't go now. And it isn't because Arsenal are not going to impress, but who knows who's going to come in for him in January, in the summer, as an example. Just to go back to January. If I know they got Kulusevski, so they're happy. If Spurs would have put a sensible bid in at the beginning of January, Liverpool wouldn't have got Luis Diaz. And so not only would Spurs have got him, you stop Luis Diaz going to a quote-unquote rival. Do you expect Arsenal to make some bids then? Is that kind of what we're saying here?
Yeah, they're definitely going to make bids. I mean, they've got those, at least one gap, probably two gaps to fill in their squad. And now that you say, you know, people like Pepe are gone, and that has left a space for them to maneuver. So, and the midfield gap was already open anyway, and they were just deciding whether or how to fill it. Is it a young player that they've already got in the ranks, or is it somebody with a bit more experience? And it looks like they'll probably go for a bit more experience. Don't worry, we're not concerned about Hwang. Yeah. Leeds like Hwang, so that's where that's coming from. But yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. But I do think that I'm surprised Arsenal have left it this late. I'm not going to lie, but they'll at least have the discussion there to see if something can be done.
There we go. Smash the like button, please, people. Staying in London, Chelsea. They beat Leicester with 10 men. Lots going on there. Reports today that Chelsea and Barcelona will hold more talks over Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang today to try and get the deal done. There were reports that he was in an airport on his way a few days ago from Gerard Romero. It's why everyone took them seriously. What's the latest with Aubameyang to Chelsea as far as you're aware, Dean?
It's been quite a frustrating one, I think, from everyone's point of view. I was expecting this to really have moved forward by now in terms of knowing exactly whether he's staying or going, but it hasn't happened. And I think that's left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth of Chelsea, who thought that negotiations would be a bit clearer than they have been. There's still definitely an optimism that they can get this done. But I think with the relationship that's been built over the summer, they thought the path might have been cleared a bit easier for them to get this done, and it hasn't been. So, yeah, it's been a little bit annoying for them. But there is still optimism that Aubameyang will join Chelsea. I'm still a little skeptical of it, I'll be honest. I think I said last week, like I was told, like this is one of those deals that really could collapse at any moment. And that is still the case. That's an easy thing to say on a transfer, but I think this one had more hurdles than most to get over, especially the fact that Aubameyang doesn't particularly want to leave Barcelona is a problem. And I think basically that leaves you into this situation of, well, what do Chelsea do here? Because they need a forward. Like, there's absolutely no doubt about it. And like, you know, the Gordon situation is a bit up in the air as well at the moment. So we don't really know exactly how that's going to play out. They're still obviously looking into it. I don't think that is is finished. At the moment, he's being priced out, but I don't believe we've seen the end of that pursuit. I think that Chelsea are going to make one more play. I think they've got one more trick up their sleeve to try and get Antony Gordon. He's considered a really important part of what they're trying to build for the future. So we should still look out for that. But let's look at Wilfried Zaha, because I think he's being primed at the moment as the top backup option. Last week, I was hearing from some people that Zaha had come back onto the radar, and I checked it out and was told, look, I don't know if I said it on here, I think I did, but like since they went for Sterling, like when they went for Raheem Sterling, they were looking to Zaha at the same time, and there was quite a lot of noise around it, genuine inquiries being made about Zaha. They signed Sterling and everything fell quiet. So Zaha went into the season with not a lot else going on, just hoping he could play his way into the transfer market and earn himself a big move. Obviously, Zaha started the season brilliantly. And in the last week, discussions have tentatively opened up about whether Zaha would be interested in this move to Chelsea. And what I'm hearing is that he absolutely is interested in that. Obviously, interesting that he didn't play at the weekend. I'm not convinced he'll play midweek either. I know that we're hearing about an injury. I don't really want to speculate over that too much. But Wilfried Zaha clearly feels at this stage that he is capable of playing for another club, and it's possibly his last chance to get a transfer. He's reasonably priced. Crystal Palace already have Ismail Assar in the back of their mind that they've been looking at as a replacement if he were to go. I think Wilfried Zaha probably deserves the chance to go to another club at this point. He served Crystal Palace well, and I think he'd be a really interesting option in that Chelsea attack. I think that having Zaha and Raheem Sterling in the same attack is actually a really exciting option, and it's one that could open up. I think a knock-on effect too would be that Conor Gallagher could potentially end up at Crystal Palace. There's not many places that Chelsea would consider letting Gallagher go at the moment. They've asked him to stay. They don't want him to leave. They've told him that to consider over the course of the season how many games he could end up playing for Chelsea and relate that to how many games he would be playing at, say, an average Premier League team. So say you play an entire season in the Premier League, there are 34 games left, plus you go have a few cup games, maximum probably about 40 games. Well, if he was to play through the rest of Chelsea's campaign and you take into account 2 cup runs domestically and the Champions League that's going on too in the background, Conor Gallagher's probably going to still feature in about 30 more games this season. And to have that experience at Chelsea is worth more than having that experience elsewhere. So big decision for him, but yeah, it could come up too. But yeah, I mean, forward, absolute priority for Chelsea. They've got to get it done. And let's see if that Ronaldo one is still on the back burner too, because that is the ultimate one, the ultimate fallback plan if nothing else comes off.
No, I agree. Like, I text while you were talking. People like from some people that watch the show, they're like, they're hearing things that the Aubameyang deal is close, and we get that Aubameyang is the priority for Chelsea. Is there a world in terms of the people you've spoken to, or is it unclear? Could they do Aubameyang and Zaha? Could that be something Chelsea? Could there be 2 more attackers added to this Chelsea line, especially with maybe it means Callum Hudson-Odoi is gone, Werner's gone, Lukaku's gone, but they've only added 1 player in, and they're still looking to get Ziyech out. So if Ziyech is to leave, that's 4 attackers that have gone. Surely they need an extra. Like you mentioned, Antony Gordon. Is it all to do with Antony Gordon? I suppose, like in the sense of if they sign Antony Gordon, and Aubameyang, they're definitely not going to get Zaha. But if Antony Gordon doesn't happen, surely they could get Zaha and Aubameyang. Or am I reading that wrong?
No, you're 100%. Yeah, so I think it's not unfeasible to believe that. Let's take Gordon out of the equation for a moment because we don't know if Chelsea can trigger the figure that Everton want. But for Aubameyang, Zaha and Fofana, say, to be Chelsea's next signings is possible for sure. Like say, Ziyech is on his way out. He's currently working to do that. Hudson-Odoi has gone to Leverkusen. Pulisic staying. Gallagher probably staying unless he goes to Crystal Palace. Brozier, we'll wait and see. At the moment, he's staying. I still think something could happen on deadline day potentially. But yeah, so I think that it's possible. It is possible. And then there's the real left field option, I guess, is do they find a midfielder? At the moment, it's not a path they've gone down. They've considered signing a midfielder. Nothing's really there for them in this moment that I've heard of. but there is a small possibility that if the right midfielder was to land, then Chelsea would do that. But really interesting storylines to open up at Chelsea in the next 2 days. And let's see what they end up with, because it's really decisive for Tuchel and what he can expect from the season.
When you mentioned Gordon, reportedly they bid 60 plus 10. Like how, like you kind of alluding to that they will go back in again. How much do you feel like they're willing to spend, and what do you think would be what do you think would be the tipping point in this deal for Everton to say, okay, we roll over and we accept?
I think that's a difficult point. Like, Everton aren't going to do that, because if they are, then they want someone like Conor Gallagher going the other way, and I don't think Conor Gallagher and Everton is adding up at the moment. So I think that is a big problem for them. I don't know how they're going to find that breakthrough, to be honest with you. Chelsea are just trying to work on basically what money can work here to find a resolution. And I think Armando Broja is, when I say like he could go on the last day, it might be that he's thrown into the equation. I know that there are people at Chelsea that really don't want that to be the case, but I think that something like that could come into the equation. And if not, it's going to be more in add-ons more than anything up front. I mean, you can't go more than 60 million up front for a deal like this. I mean, it's already ridiculous. So it's got to be a way of finding add-ons to this. So there has to be, like, Chelsea already are aware that they're perceived to be overpaying for Anthony Gordon, and at the figures we're already at, they're going to have to draw a line somewhere. And that's the point at which you say, forget it, we're just going to get Wilfried Zaha for 25 million, which, let's be honest, is a much better deal. Short term, like, just get Zaha.
Yeah. Again, I mean, Anthony Gordon's probably not going to be worth more than the 60 plus 10 in a year or two anyway. And if he doesn't push on, then no. Yeah, I mean, there are some deals where you think, fair enough. Anthony Gordon hasn't impressed as much and been as consistent as a Neto. Hasn't been as good so far in the Premier League as a Wilfried Zaha. And I'm not Zaha's biggest fan. I think that his output's improved recently. I'm kind of intrigued to see him at a bigger club. How does he cope against low blocks regularly? How does he cope being doubled up on? How does he cope with not having as much room to running behind? But they're kind of, as a football fan, they're questions I really want to see. I want answers to those questions as opposed to fan theory. And this really gives it an opportunity. But I think if Chelsea had Aubameyang and Zaha to their attacking line, it's a different type of threat. You've got goals there. You've got speed. He's a pressing, Zaha's a pressing machine. You've got, it would be really exciting. Now, I know you mentioned midfielder, and I know a lot of Chelsea fans will say, but some Chelsea fans, no matter who they've signed, have been like, without a top-class midfielder, we're doomed anyway.
Yeah.
It's very intriguing that's like the last thing on Tuchel's mind. Tuchel seems to have a lot of faith in the midfielders that he's got. Although Chelsea have kind of been forced into buying defenders and attackers due to the hemorrhage they've had in those areas. If Lukaku had been a hit, they'd have probably bought a midfielder. If Rudiger had signed a new deal, they'd have probably bought a midfielder. So they've kind of been forced a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering that, like, they did sound out Declan Rice this summer. It just wasn't feasible. And they're going to go for a big hit in midfielder at the end of the season anyway. So they've got to bear that in mind. Like, getting a make weight in the middle of this, at the end of this market, just doesn't really make sense if they can get a Declan Rice or a Jude Bellingham in a year's time. So I think that is worth bearing in mind here for Chelsea. Look, in terms of their formation too, and in those midfield, they're flipping between a 4 and a 3. I don't think they've really figured out yet exactly how it's going to work. Like, we'll see once Fofana comes in, exactly the best combinations that they can find. But Conor Gallagher's obviously in the mix at the moment for that midfield position. They're only going to let him out, surely, if they've got another option, or at least one less space to fill in the midfield. So that they need to figure out exactly what's going to happen in the next 2 days. Ross Barkley obviously been moved out. Like, that gives you an idea that there's possibly something to be done too within the squad. So yeah, there's so much to be done at Chelsea. They've had such a little amount of time to do it since the ownership began. Taken a little time to find their feet. I have no idea what Tuchel sees in Gordon. Look, the one thing I would say about 60 million for Gordon too, Rafinha went to Barcelona for £55 million. Like, that is starting to look like the bargain of the transfer window now. Like, Leeds probably looking at that and thinking, we could have got 80 million for him. Like, if that was happening now, Rafinha is worth £80 million because of the deals that are going around the Premier League. And that's what that is just a strange way to now look at this Gordon deal. Like, can you really pay more for Anthony Gordon than Barcelona have just paid 2 months ago for Rafinha? It looks weird, but Chelsea try to drown out that kind of noise.
Yeah, there are some of these deals that look that way. And look, at Man United, there's been a lot of deals that have been weird this summer, though. Like, again, I think Antony's very talented at United. 85 million is too much money for him. But it's all about whether they perform or not. People said you had ESPN calling out Man United earlier on in the summer because they said we didn't spend enough on Malassa. He can't be that good. And it's 2 games in, but you're looking at it and going, 13 million pound looks
It's
decent.
good.
Again, everybody said Lisandro Martinez was worth no more than 30 million. Been man of the match 2 games running, and I still loved what.
There's more aerial duels than Van Dijk. I saw the latest stat. Lisandro Martinez.
Mad. I can't release the footage because you get done for copyright even on Twitter. But I use Y Scout, which is an amazing app. But it's expensive. So like viewers, you can't check it. It's like £600 a year to use.
Yeah.
I've looked at every header that he's attempted to make. And he's got his head to every ball, but yet one of them it says he didn't win the header, and I've emailed them because I'm getting really panicky. I'm like, because I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what I mean, it's more like I didn't realize this till the other day. If you have a shot on target, but it travels less than 2 meters and someone blocks it, it doesn't count as a shot on target. It counts as a shot blocked. Yeah. So I'm like, that's why sometimes you go, I swear we had more shots on target today. So theoretically, if I shoot from 2 yards out and someone blocks it on the line, it doesn't count as a shot on target. So, like, what I mean by that is some stats are kind of misleading.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I'm like, but he hasn't missed a header this year, even though Souness still thinks he's not particularly good at anything. But the point is, when we pay 50 million, everyone's like, he's going to die. And then he puts 2 back-to-back man-of-the-match performances in. So there's kind of like, when it comes to Anthony Gordon's money, that's actually what I'm alluding to. If you spend money on Anthony Gordon and he comes in and he's winning you games, he's driving your team forward, within 2 months, no one will be talking about how much money that you spent on him. No one mentions Van Dijk's price tag because he's proven, I'm not suggesting Anthony Gordon would be Van Dijk in his position, but it's all about delivery in that position and nobody cares. Darwin Núñez scores goals. No one's going to care he was 100 million euros. No one's going to care that it costs 50 million in agent fees to sign Haaland because he scored 6 goals in 4 games. No one's talking about it. If he scored 6 goals all season, suddenly that deal that collectively was worth over 200 million pounds looks an absolute ridiculous amount of money. So it's about delivering off the back of these fees, isn't it?
And I think, just a player just come to mind while we're talking, and it's Cody Gakpo. And in this market, United obviously have been linked with him all summer, and that doesn't seem like a path that's going to open up now. But Southampton have just made an offer for Gakpo for £25 million. It was knocked back. But you could still get Gakpo at £45 million, and look, Southampton I think are going to try again because they're kind of seeing an opportunity whereby no one's actually getting involved. But if you're Chelsea or Arsenal right now, you're looking for another attacker. Seems like a good deal to me. It seems almost too obvious that you would go and do a deal that's been talked about all summer for mainly Man United, but other teams too. Arsenal have been linked to Gakpo already. Chelsea haven't so much. But there are deals like that out there for 45 million, and I'm like, well, you can do that, or you can do 70 million for Anthony Gordon. And it's just this Premier League tax, isn't it? Like, we always come back to it, but it's Premier League tax. And I don't know, sometimes you've got to be open-minded.
No, I totally agree. And I think that what I'm hoping for that Gakpo deal, by the way, is I hope Southampton get a bid accepted at like 28 million. And then we come in and go, it's cheaper than what you wanted to get. Because there's Premier League tax and then there's top 6 tax.
Man United tax.
And then there's Man United tax on top. And that's why I think Liverpool have done smart business with like I think like if Liverpool were trying to sign Luis Diaz, the price would be higher. Chelsea, what I've read all summer is Chelsea have been trying to do that with the De Jong situation, is let Man United work out what would make the player and Barca happy and then swoop in. And as we all know, he's currently in London, Dean, old Frenkie de Jong. It made me die. What made me die yesterday is like I got called it the biggest clickbaiter in the world, going, he's here for a wedding. Why would you even make a video on it? And then it was revealed in the evening there is no fucking wedding, which one, I addressed the wedding in the video in the first place, and he could just be here on a break. But of course, because the transfer window's on and the 2/3, because Liverpool's hat was thrown into the mix, clubs are interested in him. Maybe he's just trolling. Maybe he's like, I do fancy a couple of days away, babe. Yeah, where do you want to go? So we go London for a laugh. Just because it's sitting in a hotel room having a meal. Go, look at everyone thinking we're here for
I know, you do wonder.
Do that. Like, I just
do wonder.
what I'd love him to do tonight is like like an Insta story video and just drive past Stamford Bridge, you know, just so people with tongues
Yeah,
wag. Like I'd love
yeah,
him to do that. So
totally.
yeah, it's there we go. But yeah, we had a question that came through actually. It says, are Liverpool really going to bid for Moises Caicedo?
I mean, I haven't heard that they are going to do that specific deal. I mean, what we do know with Liverpool is that they are open-minded about signing a midfielder. It's got to be at good value though, and the reason for that is like, obviously it was a bit panic stations going into last weekend, given the start that they'd had. And then suddenly you beat Bournemouth 9-0. Suddenly things don't seem quite so bad. Fabinho's back in there and back finding his groove. And the thing that they've got to be wary of at Liverpool, and they're obviously aware of this, is that they don't really need a big money midfielder. So yeah, they're linked loosely with Frenkie at the moment. There's been another couple of links too to midfielders, but you know, you've got Curtis Jones coming back reasonably soon, probably about 3, maybe 4 weeks. Naby Keita's coming back soon as well. So suddenly you're going to have, you know, a month's time, both of those players available in your squad. You've got Harvey Elliott, who's been developing really well over the opening stages of this season. And then you've also got further down the line, Thiago to come back in, and then Oxlade-Chamberlain as a backup whenever that comes. So suddenly you're going to have 8 or 9 midfielders in the squad. And this guy that you signed on deadline day in a time of panic, you didn't really need. So Liverpool aware of that. Liverpool don't really do this. Liverpool don't really panic sign. But Jurgen Klopp has said himself, it's something they have to look at. We knew, like, even before the season started, that there was a small chance that either a Mane replacement or another midfielder might come in if it was at the right value. That hasn't actually come through yet, but it might do.
Yeah, Ali here says Tielemans will be going to Liverpool, not Arsenal. The thing is,
that's not bad. That's valid. If they get 25 million for Tielemans, and that does make some sense. Like,
yeah. I mean, Tielemans would be a great signing for them. He's more forward thinking. Neves is a different role, but I look at it with Liverpool, and they're like the one club that I think could have got Frenkie de Jong a month ago, 2 months ago. I think Liverpool's current status, the money they have, the manager, if they went knocking on that Frenkie door early and said, "Listen, I know you want to stay, but we're Liverpool. Let's have a chat." I feel like they could have turned his head. But there are, if it isn't Frenkie, there's so many other midfielders this summer. You go back and look how cheaply Basuma went to Tottenham, and just think, and as much as Liverpool will have loads of midfielders coming back, it won't be long until Ox, Keita, Thiago are injured again. And you've got Milner and Henderson, who for me are absolutely past their best as a collective playing. To be overrun by Man United midfield at times when we were pushing in the game, it's the most embarrassing thing that can happen to you as a footballer. It's Man United's midfield that was made up of McTominay and Eriksen, like, overran you. We don't overrun anyone in midfield. So I kind of look at like there would be those players, but when you think of Caicedo, you think of Neves, you think of Tielemans, barring a fit Thiago and Fabinho, they're better than every other midfielder they've got based on where they currently are, whether it be because of injuries or old age. Like, I think they need to do it. And if they don't, I think their season's not in trouble. They're still going to make the top 4, but they are not winning the Premier League. And if you're a Liverpool Football Club, not winning the Premier League is bad news.
Yeah.
Comment here says Rafael Leao to Chelsea. Any updates on that at all?
I mean, he's so expensive. He's got a clause. His release clause is 120 million. He's been talked about for sure. So when AC Milan were trying to sign Hakim Ziyech, Chelsea used that as an opportunity to find out about Leao and his contract situation and his valuation and his wages and what he's like as a person and so on and so forth. And they had a discussion there, and they left knowing that, like, they weren't going to budge on this price. I know that they've been trying to look at a new contract for Leao, and if that was to happen, then potentially that release clause will be dropped or gone for next summer. So I think that Rafael Leao's probably one for next year. Look, he's a great player. I love watching Milan when Leao's playing. He had a really good game at the weekend, actually. He's the superstar that's risen from this title-winning team, basically. I just wonder if they do end up getting Aubameyang, which we say is still very possible, if not likely, then Aubameyang is obviously just a stopgap, like for them to get somebody else. And I think that it makes perfect sense that you get Aubameyang, even if you get Zaha as well, that you can still get in a Leao, maybe Christopher Nkunku, somebody like that in a year's time. So let's look further down the line at that. By the way, going back to Liverpool, the other name that I've just remembered that is a potential as a midfielder is Konrad Laimer, and I know he has been touted. He's a reasonably priced option, is open to a move to the Premier League, playing at RB Leipzig. He fits the profile of player that Liverpool do sign in moments like this. Wouldn't have an expectation to play every game. Konrad Laimer, for me, is one that I could see coming along if they were to do something like that. So just want to keep an eye on just before we move on from Liverpool.
Yeah, no, totally agree. A lot of Liverpool fans want him as well. Like, he's a name that, in fairness, he's one of those players all summer that people have been wanting their clubs to kind of go in for. He's someone that social media like. He's a player that football Twitter really likes and kind of looks at and everything else. But I know you've got a hard stop at 11:30, mate. You got things to do. And viewers, look, we'll be back later on today. Me and Lee Gunner around 6 p.m. tonight, plus match reactions to the Chelsea game this evening. So make sure you stay with the terrace. Dean, always a pleasure to speak about transfers. It really, really is as we go into the final few days of the window. Viewers, before you leave, please hit like buttons. Please subscribe. If you've only just tuned in now, the video's timestamps, so rewatch it and go to all the different timestamps. It will break down Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool's current goings on, ins and outs and all that jazz. Until next time, take care, goodbye, God bless, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.